Hello and welcome to Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics. This is Cyrus. Hope everybody's having a great week, wherever in the world you happen to be locked down at. And on tonight's video, we are talking about a most interesting astral experience. It's a brief one, but it got me thinking. So this is a question by a patron, and I always try to answer and help out people who support this channel as best I can with one-on-one time. And so I was sent this question and I want to address it as a video because I think maybe we can all learn from this. So here is the question or the story that was submitted to me. And by the way, if you're new around here, we talk about this type of thing on this channel: out-of-body experiences, mystical experiences, experiences with deceased loved ones. And we put knowledge together from different sources and attempt to understand it all. Okay, so let's take a look at this question. The patron asks, I have not been successful at astral travel except for one time when I was meditating while sitting on my bed. A bright white light appeared above me, and the next thing I knew, I was in the hallway. So this by itself is quite fascinating, and I'll get to that later. It was so very real. I wasn't aware of having a body, but for sure my consciousness was in the hall. Then my daughter came in the front door with a group of friends and went upstairs. The caveat being, my daughter crossed the veil 2 years ago. So when I saw her so real, I was overjoyed. Just as quickly, my consciousness was back with my body sitting on the bed. The only thing is, she didn't seem to be aware that I was there. What do you think? So this one deserved a video for sure because there was a lot of just stuff I could dissect here. So I'm going to try to do that just based upon my knowledge base of this never-ending subject. So, real quick, thank you for watching. But if you haven't done so yet, go down, hit that subscribe button, like the video, hit that notification bell. Helps keep this work and the study of this most important area of inquiry going. I always appreciate that. You can also get involved, work with me personally by contacting me down below or becoming a patron over at the Patreon page. All right, to continue. So this lady, she normally is not so successful at astral traveling, but something happened when meditating. And that's actually the first thing I can analyze here. So while meditating, she had an experience, even though she doesn't normally have an experience. And that's a nice reminder to dive into meditation in whatever way best is suited for you. And you may be surprised the types of experiences that can happen, especially if you make it into a consistent thing in your life, that you take 20 minutes aside each day to go on YouTube and find some nice meditation music. I type in like forest meditation music or chants or Native American musical instruments, whatever it may be, and take some time aside to focus on this. And sometimes almost these spontaneous spiritually transformative events can happen to you, especially if you have loved ones on the other side. So that's interesting. Now, the next interesting part about this is a bright white light appeared above me, and the next thing I knew, I was in the hallway of the house. Now, I've never experienced the white light when I'm going out of my body. I know some of you all are, 110% convinced that the white light is evil and it's coming to get you. And no, I don't believe that. Even if some people who are meddling around with lower density realms, lower dimensional wavelengths, and maybe have dealt with imposter spirits, but the phenomenon of a white light is usually a higher entity that is coming in, making contact with you. So this is why in NDEs, go toward the light. Very often the light is your own higher self, so it's very much you're going toward yourself. And on that higher level, it's almost as if you are God in that instance, or you're going toward the God's reflection of yourself. I mean, or even something even more metaphysical and difficult to understand. But whatever the case may be, an encounter with a light usually means, for better or worse, an encounter with a higher dimensional being. And it may even be that you cannot see what that dimensional being looks like beyond a white light because your own frequency does not match it. It's almost like it's just too bright for you to look at. And it may have, if it's a positive being, then it has that great, like, unconditional love for you. It's not so much that it is the light; it is the entity, and your frequency just might not be adapted to it. So you might see it and just think that it's or not be able to see a form necessarily to the entity. It's just white light, right? Okay, so encountering a white light through an out-of-body experience means that some higher entity has taken the initiative to come down and make contact with you and help to guide you out of your body, especially if you're not somebody who normally has OBE. So what happened is it seemed like a higher dimensional entity, much like during an NDE, when you may meet a higher dimensional entity and you go through a tunnel and you go into a different realm. You might be guided by the light, which again it is some kind of a higher dimensional being. So such an entity came down and initiated an experience. So the next thing that she noticed is that she was out of her body, but her own astral body hadn't developed. So I wasn't aware of having a body, but for sure my consciousness was in the hall. So she disconnected. This happens to me sometimes if I am just out of my body normally in my bedroom. I may or may not have an astral form. I may sometimes be just pure consciousness floating around. To me, that doesn't necessarily provide me an advantage, except that there's like a weightlessness and you're just singularly focused, like consciousness moving around, and you can't look down and see your hands. You don't have any. You're just your thoughts encompassing like maybe some spatial reference point, but that's it. So now but something had initiated this experience that had taken her out of her body. But why? But now we might know why. Then my daughter came in the front door with a group of friends and went upstairs. So this is super interesting. So why did this entity initiate this? The entity initiated this because the entity, the guide, her higher self, whatever it might have been, wanted her to have a contact experience with her daughter at that moment. But it seemed that this was an experimental thing because they didn't actually connect, and her daughter missed her, didn't realize her mom was now in that corresponding location, and they were not able to reunite. So they were trying it. This entity was trying to initiate a reunion, and it sounds like it didn't go quite as planned because no reunion happened and her daughter just kept moving past her. But she, of course, it was a success for this woman because she got to see her daughter and she was overjoyed by it, which, at least for her, was a very powerful, validating experience. Even if her daughter did not see her back, she got to see her daughter running around and being, still being alive, obviously. So now there's the next, a next enigma, the next riddle that is in this story, which is that my daughter came in the front door. How can that be? So you're in your house, you go out of your body. How are you still in your house, and how is your daughter coming in to your house if you're out of your body, right? Because wouldn't your daughter be a ghost? Wouldn't she just float through the house? And why would she have friends with her? Why would she still be herself? Well, for those of us who follow this information and realize the vast consistency and all the levels of information, we can piece together why. Obviously, there's some schools of thought that I don't agree with, that will say, oh, it was some kind of a facsimile, or it was an entity just providing this comforting illusion. A lot of these nonsensical ideas are fatalistic ideas, and I don't buy any of that because I've had many experiences of my own. In many, many, many experiences of my own, I have very carefully researched this phenomenon, and I've come to find that if you leave your body in your house, or have a legit astral projection experience, so you're no longer in a quote your house, you may be in the other version of your house, so the higher frequency version of your same house, possibly in your same neighborhood. Now we get into what we call the astral world, of the astral earth. So it's the world we're living in right now, the same planet we're living in right now, but it's on that higher frequency. So people who cross over from this world very, very often will just continue to have, to lead the life that they were living, but now on that higher frequency vibration, which is like this world, but it's also very different from this world, yet it can match the same geographical territory. So wherever you are right now, I don't know whether it's a house or like some little studio apartment in some weird country like with me right now, no matter what crazy place you're in, because the astral earth matches the entire topography, geography of the three-dimensional earth, each place has a corresponding place on that side. Now, it may be that a building will not even exist where the building you're in now is at, and you'll go out of your body and just be floating through the air because there's it doesn't match on that side with any kind of a building. On the flip side, if it's a residential area, it's very likely that there will be a residential building on that side because of people. That it's almost like it magnetizes that side to this side when there's people living in a space, and people who are who go to sleep at night laying in a bed in a house or an apartment on this side. It's almost like they need a place to go to when they're asleep, and then they're sometimes traveling into that side, and it wouldn't really make much sense if what they were going into was some kind of like, I don't know, an astral box company, and then you're leaving your body and floating around some sterile warehouse. That wouldn't make any sense, would it? It makes more sense if people can leave their bodies and go to that side and still even be in like a mirror of where they're living here. That way they're not going to get, they're not going to have an unpleasant experience. Let's say that you leave your body here. Where do you want to appear at? You want to appear in the same place you were just in, so you're not uncomfortable, so you're not freaking out. So whether it's our subconscious minds that create it, or it's a higher power that creates it for us, typically houses and apartments have a corresponding building on that side where people continue to live their lives. Families continue to live their lives, including with deceased family members. Sometimes we go to sleep at night, and grandpa passes away, we go to sleep at night, and we don't even know it because we have no memory, but we're still in the same house with that family member, and they're still in our lives. And grandpa gets to come back to the same house that he was so familiar with his same family members, his same loved ones, and still be in the same type of setting. Whether or not that's his new permanent home, but it's still the mirror on that side. Now, in my experience, not only will a house, an apartment be mirrored on that side, an entire city is mirrored, and well, of course, the entire planet is mirrored. Things have higher dimensional components, so something on this side that might have nothing there, be abandoned, might be full of life. The old abandoned ballroom that people think is haunted because they hear music playing at night. It's because on the astral frequency, it's actually a very active, busy place, and sometimes the two worlds just kind of synchronize or match together. So on a dark and stormy night, you hear music coming from the ballroom, and then that's your freaky ghost experience. But really, it's because the ballroom is still in business on the higher dimensional plane. You might be asking, what happens if the ballroom gets torn down here? I don't think anything would happen. I think you tear down the ballroom here, build a house, and then people will be hearing music in the house late at night because it's still geographically synchronized to where the ballroom is on the astral plane. And so so we can use this example for many things, ideas, concepts. A lot of astral travelers that I've talked to, including even in my own family, have talked about how other planets that are barren, lifeless rocks on this side have full of life on the astral spectrum. Even places like the moon or Mars or Venus, there's nothing there here. If you travel there astrally, which you can if you really want to go there, you just project your thoughts. It'll be full of life in cities and like ET races. That's the way that these other dimensions, other spectrums, frequencies operate. It's also why you don't have to be scared of some of the naysayers who try to deny that any of that exists or that it's all like a facade. Again, harkening back to a video I just made about a particular author who has been causing a lot of fear and anxiety. Those of us in the trenches, like, whether it's myself or this patron or many of the contributors on this group or people who investigate this world, we know the way it works. It's very consistent. And so the reason that her daughter was there and running upstairs is because most likely her daughter still lives in the house and has a life there, and sometimes even sees her mom as well, because if we all go to sleep at night, and very frequently appearing on that side and reuniting and coming back in and not even having memory of the experience. But it makes sense, especially when we lose our children, that they will just continue living in that same house you're in now, and they're not a ghost going bump in the night because they're trapped in the house. If someone feels the presence of a loved one in a house, it doesn't mean that the loved one is stuck in the house. It means that they are operating on the astral frequency of the same house and bleeding in sometimes. So you might be cooking dinner in your kitchen, and your deceased loved one may be in the same kitchen cooking dinner right on top of you, just different layers of the same place. So again, I hope that dispels some of the superstition about ghosts who are tormented souls living in the attic. They might be perfectly happy astral residents just sharing the same dimensional space with you. The only shame about the story is that she didn't see her mom. And I think it's because the entity pulled her out of her body, but it's like she didn't have time to form her astral body, so she was just formless consciousness, and you can't see formless consciousness. So the daughter missed her, didn't see her in the house because she didn't have a form, and that's why it's good to have a form and good to have an astral body, so you can interact with people and live on that world, as opposed to not being able to interact with the environment around you. I think that would be a little bit of an awkward way to be. So that's my interpretation of this story. I think it's very interesting because it's a very short question, short story, but each little line of text, there's so much to break apart and try to understand. So I'm curious what your opinions are. So write in the comments down below what you thought of this. And get involved and pick up books like Understanding Life After DEATH over at afterlifetopics.com. The Afterlife and Beyond, my most recent book. Awakened by Death is another book you guys could check out that I edited, and has a collection of incredible stories, NDEs, and just encounters with, encounters with the beyond, or just discovering one's mortality. So it's an incredible book, and that is Awakened by Death by Karen Swain and Cyrus Kirkpatrick. You can grab that on Amazon as well if you guys are looking for something to read while you're in lockdown. And or also sign up as a patron over at the Patreon if you want to get in touch with me personally and work with me personally and keep this project going. That's it. Thanks for watching, guys, and hope this was of some use, and hope that it was of use to the questioner. And I will see you guys on the next video.